first event, so we didn't expect such a nice turnout. So probably we underestimated how many people we will need, but they are coming. So tonight we will have a few talks. So myself, starting with our ABM journey at UserPilot. My name is Amelia. I'm the VP of Marketing at UserPilot. And I'm also a co-founder at ZenABM, a bit of a coming out here. And because basically when I started working on ABM, mostly focusing on LinkedIn as our distribution platform, we just weren't able to find a tool that would help us execute it the way we wanted. So targeting specific accounts and capturing the intent in these accounts. So my husband, who's a developer, said what a developer says to you when their love language is JavaScript. Let me look at the API documentation. So that's how it started, the romantic story. But let's move on to... Where's the clicker? Do we have a clicker? Oh, okay. We don't have the clicker, so we'll need to make do. I already introduced myself. What I didn't mention is that in the last 18 months, we generated a 5+ million in influence pipeline at with 2x ROAS from our ABM program on LinkedIn for UserPilot. And I will be basing this talk/workshop. There will be some interactive elements for you. There will be QR codes to scan and materials to access and even a test to do for yourself to test your ABM knowledge. So stay tuned. I'm basing this whole talk on our experience here. So what will you learn today? How to set your LinkedIn ABM goals and budget, and how to build your target account lists, structure your LinkedIn ABM campaigns, create your LinkedIn ads based on best practices. So around December, we analyzed data from 211 of our customers and altogether 161,000 LinkedIn ads. And we saw some best practices, right? We knew which ads have high CTRs, which ads have low CTRs. We basically did an analysis using Claude Code on the top performing, bottom performing ads across different countries, industries, company sizes. And there are some really interesting insights into what you should be doing to get good engagement rates. So sharing that too. And what do you need to do when you're launching your campaigns to avoid expensive mistakes? How many of you here in the audience are running LinkedIn ads already? Show of hands. A lot of people, yeah. So you know all the booby traps in Campaign Manager, right? What's your favorites? Is it audience expansion toggled by default? Is it LAN? Or is it manual bidding hidden in extra settings? Well, you know what I'm talking about, right? I see some nods. And we're going to talk about how to track your results, including using ZenABM. Actually, I think, there should have been an intro on ZenABM here. I can make one. I don't have my slides, right? So maybe you can go after me. After me, there will be Kasper, who came to us to present in front of you from Denmark. Kasper works at Sparkforce. He's one of the co-founders at Sparkforce, which is essentially a B2B agency that helps, companies, B2B SaaS companies achieve growth, among others, through LinkedIn ads, through performance marketing, outreach, you name it. So if any of you needs an expert, Kasper is the person to go to. And most notably, we had some of our customers from a local London agency as well, Rocket SaaS, which is another great agency specializing in SaaS performance marketing. So again, if you're looking for some help here, I would advise you to talk to these two guys in the networking session after the talks. And after Kasper's presentation, we will have a discussion panel with a few of our speakers from the ABM Bootcamp that just finished last week. And this presentation is kind of a short version of one of the talks I gave there. So if you want to test your knowledge after the session today, scan this QR code. You will access a short test you can do in about 2 minutes. And then when you submit it, you will also get the correct responses with things that maybe you would like to improve.
Sorry, can we move a bit? Like, how is that? I feel like there's a lot of space. Okay, so let's crank up at the back.
Give us some hair. It's okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Brilliant. So some of you may have heard of Kyle Boyer, right? The Growth Unhinged newsletter. So around a year ago, Kyle Boyer featured our initial early results after literally 3 months of running the ABM program in his Growth Unhinged newsletter. At that point, we were achieving around $12 in pipeline for every dollar we were spending. And we were already around $600,000 in pipeline after 3 months. So it is possible to see results from ABM on LinkedIn quite fast. Don't be fooled if someone's telling you need to wait a year to see any results. And these are the results that we have seen so far, right? So we've been targeting a lot of accounts. This definitely has been a one-to-many ABM play for us. And so this is the number of accounts that we reached as of, I started working on this presentation a couple of weeks ago, I'm not going to lie. So as of a couple of weeks ago, we are targeting 47,000 accounts this year. So of course, we don't have 100% audience penetration yet, I hope. Well, no, I'm being realistic with audience penetration on LinkedIn. And we launched over 500 ads. We spent at this point over 500K on LinkedIn and generated over 5 million in pipeline, closed on over 1 million. Yeah, our team, full-time members, was around, I would say, 4.5 to execute this process, but probably with Claude Code, you could even do with less. And yeah, this is the kind of revenue attribution that ZenABM gives you out of the box. So you basically plug your LinkedIn campaign manager in, plug your CRM in. It looks for the deals that come from companies that have seen your campaigns, engaged with your campaigns, and that the deals opened after they have engaged, of course, not before. So it helps you track the results from your ABM campaigns in a more transparent way. Angie's going to talk a little bit more about it soon. But yeah, let's move on to the meat. Are you ready to set your LinkedIn ABM campaign budget? How many of you are running ABM programs on LinkedIn already? A few people. I see a lot of agencies raising their hands. Surprise, surprise. And do you start from calculating, basically, well, you definitely need to have a budget, right, before starting, but do you set revenue goals before starting your campaigns? Yeah, of course, the experts are nodding in agreement because they're experts, but believe it or not, a lot of companies that I talk to set out to start their ABM campaigns without actually knowing what they want to achieve. And then surprise, surprise, well, how can you achieve a result if you don't know what you want to achieve? So this is the first step before you start, running any campaigns, like including LinkedIn campaigns, of course. Decide on what is your revenue target, and then look realistically at your average ACV, and look at how many deals you actually need to open, and then what is your close rate in order to achieve your revenue target. That will give you an idea, basically, how many deals you need to open. And then how do you open deals? These people need to somehow come to your website, sign up for, talk to someone, right? So either someone from your team is going to reach out to them, more difficult, doable, but more difficult, or they're going to come for inbound by engaging with your content enough times until they decided, okay, I'm going to book a demo, talk to someone for your team, or sign up for a free trial. What is your landing page conversion rate to these early stage opportunities? And that metric will give you an idea how many visitors to these landing pages you need to drive from your campaigns, so from your LinkedIn ads. And that will give you an idea how many clicks on your LinkedIn ads you need, because if someone clicks on an ad with the website visitors objective, they're going to land on the landing page, right? And knowing your average cost per click or looking at some industry benchmark, especially, from people targeting similar audience. Again, I'm going to share a QR code with access to our benchmarks report. So you can see, like, on average, how people are doing, what are the CPCs in your country, in your industry. But that gives you an idea. If you multiply the number of clicks that you need to get to drive enough website visitors to open enough deals, times the average cost per click in your kind of industry, what is your realistic budget? Okay, and a lot of people don't do this exercise, and then they're disappointed because they're like, oh, we spent $500 on LinkedIn last month, and we still haven't opened $20,000 in pipeline. Yeah, that is not realistic. Now, in our benchmarks reports, we discovered from these 211 companies that were running ads through ZenABM that the deal open rate, the average deal open rate from the number of companies that they targeted was, would anyone like to guess what it was? What was the percentage of deals they opened? Oh, that's a very good guess. It was 0.58%, right? So out of every 1,000 companies, that gives you less than 6 deals. That is, speaks kind of to your imagination or to you when it comes to expectations. All righty. And on the previous slide, you see this QR code. I don't know if you guys already scanned it. This is basically a budget calculator. If you don't want to do like the mental math, you can just plop in your numbers and it will calculate the budget, the number of companies you should target, etc., etc. Okay, so exercise 1, set your campaign revenue goals and calculate your ABM budget. Of course, we could treat it as homework. And this is the deal open rates and some other metrics from our industry reports. So the top performance, top 25% of the companies by pipeline opened in the report have only slightly higher deal open rate. And yeah, let's move on. Budget allocation. How many ads can we afford to run? Okay, so let's say you already know that your realistic budget to achieve your pipeline targets would be $20,000 per month, right? And then you go crazy and you publish 150 ads with that. That's another common mistake, right? That you spread your budget too thinly relative to what is your average cost per click. And then you're not learning anything. Most of your ads aren't even being served. Your whole campaign isn't like your audience penetration, your ad frequency is low. Your audience penetration may be low as well because you're not setting the right budget if you have a lot of different campaigns. So one thing we recommend to ZenABM users is that they literally limit themselves to 5 image ads, 5 TLAs, 1 to 3 carousels, maybe 1 to 3 videos for starters to benchmark themselves and to understand what is performing. How do you understand what is performing? By getting enough clicks on the ads and actually distributing the ads enough times to your audience to have meaningful data, meaningful engagement data. So this is the kind of budget calculation, not budget, but like asset allocation calculation formula that you can use. It looks a little bit complicated. They're based upon Ali Yondrian's post, which kind of opened my eyes to it the first time. Ali Yondrian also spoke at our bootcamp, so there is a recording of his talk on our YouTube channel. Essentially, you want to drive around 3 to 4 clicks per ad. And then knowing your cost per click, you can easily calculate how much it would cost you to run, say, 5 image ads, right? To get these 4 to 3 clicks per day. And you basically take this, multiply X times Bertie, and you see, like with the number of ads that you have in your campaigns, what budget you would need to run this many ads. Or conversely, you take your budget and you divide it by 30, you get the daily budget. If your ads are running every day, maybe you pause your ads on the weekends. That kind of depends on your approach and your audience. And then you divide it by 20, you look at your daily budget and you divide it by these 3 to 4 clicks times the cost per click. In that way, you get the number of ads you need. All righty. So how many ads can you afford to run with your budget? Another thought-provoking question to ask yourself before you start working on your campaigns. And then building your target account lists, that's an important one. Another common mistake that companies running ABM make is that they go to LinkedIn and they use broad targeting companies in the US that are technology and information technology companies, and suddenly you capture the entire world, including all the IBMs and the local, like IT shops fixing broken phone screens. And don't do that, right? Like broad targeting, well, that's not for the faint-hearted. We always recommend either using company lists or contact lists. And for company lists, again, another mistake people make is that they first go after completely cold audiences. These are the target accounts that we want to go after. Instead of looking, at accounts that already have had some interactions with their company. So churned customers, closed lost deals that weren't disqualified because they were a bad fit, but you simply, didn't manage to convert them. Maybe there was something missing in your product, but you have now. Look at lookalike companies to your best customers, your largest deals. Look at what does it mean lookalike companies? It can mean their direct competitors. It can mean very similar complementary companies. It can mean, like their subsidiaries or local branches of their companies. These are all opportunities to increase that conversion rate to deal open. Look at then companies that have engaged with you previously, your content, right? Like basically start building your list from looking at the opportunities inside your CRM. All right. And of course, your competitors are a great source of target accounts, especially if you have the opportunity to, for instance, we have an SDK user pilot, so like we can detect the scripts, but the users of our competitors are installing on their websites. So it's a bit easier for us. Not everyone has this luxury. But most of your competitors are listing some logos on their landing pages, right? Or have some case studies, or, there are not anonymous reviews of your competitors on different review sites. With like the AI tools, there are so many opportunities to scrape your competitors' users these days that this is another great source of good lists. Especially if people are complaining about your competitors and you can tap into that vein. Right. Structuring your LinkedIn ABM campaigns. How do we do that? One ABM campaign is basically one target list. If there is something substantially different about your two different target lists that would not allow you to run the same messaging to them, you basically need two separate campaigns. So this is fairly straightforward. And whenever you launch separate ABM campaigns, you should take into account that you need a separate budget, you need separate goals. You also need to think about tracking the analytics, so tracking the performance of these campaigns separately, so not mixing them up in the same campaign or, the campaign group. Because it will be very difficult for you to track which companies are engaging and what is your deal open rate from different ABM campaigns, because this can inform you where you should be investing more. So if you're targeting specific industries or maybe specific geographies, or maybe you're targeting different personas in different campaigns that have different use cases for your product, like for instance, customer success versus sales, right? then you should be able to track which of these campaigns basically bring you a higher ROI. And that way you can then double down on what is already working instead of trying to change the reality. And also another common mistake is dividing, that we made as well at the beginning, divided your campaigns into too many stages. The funnel is pretty much dead, right? So people don't really move through the sales funnel in this linear way, right? It's very hard to generate demand. So there's no need to split your campaigns into multiple stages, because it will be really hard for you to even populate the stages of the campaigns, have enough audience to run the ads. Okay, this is our go-to MVP AVM campaign structure breakdown. So we had the completely cold stage, and then we have the retargeting, re-engagement, warm stage, however we call it. And in both of these stages, we have limited ads, as you can see. So if we target only one persona in each campaign, this will be around 16 ads altogether per stage. So only 5 thought leader ads, 5 to 6 single image ads, 1 to 3 carousel ads. Text ads you can run pretty much for free, so I don't really count them into the budget, because with the website visitors objective, hardly anyone clicks on text ads, so you won't be paid a lot for them. Video ads, this is a difficult format to nail. So, start with 1 and see how it goes. And then DM ads and document ads are really daunting. They're very hard to nail, and they typically have a very high cost per lead. So another common mistake, don't use LinkedIn lead gen ads to promote lead magnets, webinars, ebooks. These are very high level, top of the funnel resources, and you'll be paying sometimes hundreds of dollars for a single webinar sign up that doesn't mean anything. Drive people to your landing pages through much cheaper formats. The absolutely cheapest format from LinkedIn ads is, any ideas right now? Bots. I'll give you a hint. Yeah, thought leadership ads, exactly. So your regular organic posts that then get sponsored through Campaign Manager by your company. And if you basically include the link to the webinar and you write a really engaging post, I will mention how to write engaging posts in a second, people will click through to your landing pages and sign up we're seeing around 90 cents per website visit from LinkedIn. Yes, it's possible. As opposed to around $12, $14 per click from single image ads. And I'm not gonna talk about DM ads, because it starts from our cheapest campaign and most successful campaign, early days. So we did promote an event, was $44 per sign up. So huge difference. Okay, moving companies between cold and warm campaign stages. We basically do it based on company properties, and surprise, we use ZenABM to set these campaign stage company properties based on combination of engagement factors and potentially other properties from HubSpot. So yeah, if the company has, for instance, seen our ads 100 times and clicked 3 times, we consider them warm, and we can layer something else on top. So for instance, they visited high intent website pages, or they have engaged with your previous assets. Right, creating your LinkedIn ads based on best practices. What are the best practices from this industry report that we ran? We basically saw these median CTRs to landing pages. So thought leader ads, this is a bit tricky. I think these thought leader ads in our cohort weren't very good, because the median CTR in general was quite low. A good thought leader ad CTR is, I would say, around 7 to 10%. Why? It's not the CTR to landing page. It's any engagements, any clicks, because you can't choose website visits objective with your thought leader ads. So you have to basically choose the engagement or brand awareness objective. So LinkedIn counts all the engagements, but you can still see how many people went to your landing pages from thought leader ads. Of course, if you included a link inside the body of the post, if you switch the columns on LinkedIn from performance to engagement. So that's the way we calculated the effective, for some people we call it eCTR, right? So effective CTR to landing pages. And here it's quite low, but I've seen higher. Like on our recent ZenABM campaign, actually we had almost exactly 1% clicks to landing pages, so effective CTR, and around 8% CTR overall. So yeah, thought leader ads becoming very popular. They will be getting more expensive and more difficult to run, I think. Here's the benchmarks report, so I'm going to move away. And if some of you want to pore over the data, there we go. Our timing, not bad, not great, not terrible, as they say. Ads by type breakdown. Yeah, I already mentioned it earlier in the campaign structure breakdown, so I'm going to skip through. Single image ads best practices. What we did in the report is we also analyzed the top performing 25% of top performing ads by CTR visually for patterns, and we did the same to the bottom performers. And that was super, super interesting to see that there were some emerging patterns. So clear problem or job to be done in the headline. One message per ad, not feature soup. And yeah, it works both across the warm and cold stages. But let's see a bit more details here, what patterns we saw across the top performing ads with very, very high CDRs or single image ads. Photos of real people as opposed to stock photos or AI generated photos. Why? My hunch is that they are so rare that they are basically a pattern interrupt. And people feel like, oh, maybe this is actually user generated content. Specific limited time offer. Of course, if you're very clear about what's in it for me, the audience is more likely to engage with such ads. And problem solution framework, also quite common. Partnerships, that it was usually tied to the offers that people are partnering up with another company and offering something together. We tested that as well with offering like to build a follow-up, for instance, email outreach campaign to the most engaged accounts. And yeah, these types of ads have very, very high CTRs. Strong CTA button. That's something that people are often missing out on. Like if someone's scrolling LinkedIn, they need to know that they are supposed to click on what they're saying. That really helps, ironically. Diagrams or flowcharts. This is kind of in line with these very popular posts about different workflows. So you may have seen these posts, like here's a workflow of all the tools I'm using to orchestrate scaled outreach, for instance. So these work pretty well as well. We kind of AI generated a monster that combined all the best practices in one image. So limited time offer, a workflow. Well, this is not a real photo, but imagine it is, right? Social proof, testimonial, a verdict button with a clear offer. And this is an example of one of our ads that performed pretty well. That one, I think, had a CTR of around 0.77%. Thought leader ads best practices. For this thought leader ad with an update on our ABM results had a CTR of 17.4% and effective clicks to landing page, so effective CTR of 3.4%. So it was very, very cheap in terms of generating clicks. Now, how to write such posts? And Well, typically people say that thought leader ads work for awareness rather than conversion. But if you include links in a way that is natural and meaningful, like the link is not just check out my product, right? But it needs to offer something that is an extension of the content of the post. Then I think they can work in those pushing more bottom of the funnel offers. And playbooks, tactics, workflows, freebies, events, webinars, and point of view content, strong opinions, results. This works best across the posts that we have analyzed. Don't attach images or videos to single image ads. That typically seems to kill engagement. Maybe because people need to click more or they don't see enough of the content like above the fold. I don't know really why, but that's what I've seen in the ads. Tone of voice, always first person. It should be relatable. It should be personal content. You may sometimes see these really bad posts promoted by really big companies that have big budgets. Like, look at our partner reports, right? Governor Quadrant mentioned us, or we got an industry award. Nobody cares about that. It's not about, you as a company. It's about you as a person, your success story, your failures, your journey, your results. I think Melissa has some brilliant posts on her LinkedIn. Melissa's founder of a webinar platform for automating your webinars, basically, so you don't have to repeat them over and over. And I've been following her for a long time. She writes really, really engaging content. So that kind of content could be turned into thought leader ads, of course, if it's aligned with the particular use case. Personal transformation focus, link placement. Usually the links in the ads we analyze were towards the end. But the most important part is to embed them contextually in the story, right? So it shouldn't be this like, oh, check out my product at the end. They were quite long, so between 1,000 and 1,500 characters. And yeah, they had a clear CTA again that was embedded in the content of the post. Carousel ads, another format that I didn't like a while ago when we started running the campaigns. I think LinkedIn has changed something about the UX. They're not as popular as single image ads, but I think you can pack a lot more content into one ad. And I've seen a lot cheaper CPCs on single image ads than on carousel ads than on single image ads. So that's something to potentially test. They're really good for tool comparisons, step-by-step walkthroughs. So something that you can't really pack into a single image, but it makes more sense if you show a series. Carousel worked really well for that. Problem solution frameworks for a specific job to be done, for cold audiences, and feature walkthroughs for warm audiences, or even for customer campaigns when you want to promote like new releases for expansion revenue. This could work really well. All right, and some examples of our carousel ads. And we're going to speed up a little bit because we're a tiny bit behind on schedule. Now, step 5. Now that you know everything, you should know about how many ads you need, how many ads you can afford, how should you create them, and what mistakes should you avoid when launching your ads. Well, we already discussed like the strategic mistakes. So too many ads per campaign, splitting the ads by both persona and intent. So your campaign audiences are so small that A, you're paying a huge premium for serving them. And B, you may not even be able to run some of them because LinkedIn has pretty tight audience restrictions. You can't run campaigns to fewer than 300 members. So you can't really slice and dice your ABM campaigns too much. Using leads as a success metric, that's my favorite, because we all used to have that lead generation mindset. How many leads can I pull out of my hat at the end of the month to prove to my executives that ads are working? And that is really defining the purpose of account-based marketing, because your goal is to influence the whole account, and the account may come through inbound, after engaging with your landing page content, after engaging with several assets, the way we attribute success is influence-based. So we look at how many deals we open with the companies that have reached enough impressions on our ads, or you could base your engagements, base your influence thresholds on engagements as well, if you prefer. But we don't use the last touch click-based attribution or how it leads the campaign generated for several reasons. We probably would even miss out on a lot of these deals. If you're familiar with native HubSpot attribution, you know that there are so many conditions that the lead needs to meet to be attributed to an ad. Right? They need to have accepted your cookies policy. They can't have an ad blocker on, VPNs, yada, yada, yada. They need to have converted within a certain window, same session, etc. So you're probably going to be setting yourself up for failure at getting false negatives if you only look at leads. So I would strongly advise you to track accounts that are being influenced in your by your ads. And, again, ZenABM does that automatically. What else? Over-engineering account scoring, so too many campaign stages, and LinkedIn campaign settings mistakes. So my favorite, brand awareness campaign objective. I know some people may disagree that maybe it does make sense if you want to distribute something really, really fast, but then usually LinkedIn doesn't really target people that are likely to engage with your ads. So you may see a lot more impressions, but a lot fewer clicks, obviously. It's not the objective that you set in your campaign. Maximum delivery. So again, your budget will be spent as fast as possible to deliver the campaigns as fast as possible, rather to whom it really matters. LAN, so LinkedIn as network. This basically can include connected TV. So your ads will be shown and when your target personas, kids, are watching Peppa Pig. And that happens quite a lot. And leaving audience expansion on, I absolutely don't trust native LinkedIn filters, so I wouldn't risk it. I generated this image of my lookalike as the Halloween costume with all these LinkedIn settings toggled on. I think it resonated with a lot of people running LinkedIn campaigns. And tracking results, what to measure. Accounts moving stages, ideally weekly. So if you set a stage called interested accounts, right, that is based on a certain level of engagement, like track what percentage of your accounts is making their way to this stage, on regular basis. It's more often than weekly is borderline impossible with how LinkedIn API works, because they have a lot of, I'm not going to bore you, but they have a lot of privacy and basically restrictions that don't allow you to track fewer than 3 engagements, clicks in any time period from the same company. Look at stage-to-stage conversion rates, right? So as we said, from all the accounts targeted to the deal open, so open opportunity stage, what is your conversion rate? And are you kind of on that benchmark? Let's say if you trust our benchmarks reports, or are you very, very far off? And are you, being consistent by comparing yourself to yourself? Pipeline per dollar spent, efficiency, pipeline influenced, of course, but then also how much pipeline are you generating per every dollar you're spending? So if you're running especially multiple ABM campaigns targeting different audiences, you may see differences in this pipeline per dollar spent, which may mean that some audience is converting at a higher rate and it's cheaper for you to reach them. So maybe you should focus on that piece. Okay, and ad diagnostic metrics, so the more classic way to measure, but these are all leading metrics, right? So if they correlate, of course, your CTR correlates with progression through the stages, and then this correlates with the deal open rate or opportunity open rate, because your landing pages also make sense, so they're not bait and switch. which is also important, but a topic for another presentation maybe. You want to track your CTR to landing page. You want to track how much it costs you to generate one landing page visit. And of course, what is your conversion from this landing page to the next event that you want to track? So what is this trial sign up? Alrighty. And we have these dashboards that allow you to track all these stages, which companies are in which stage, like how they have been moving stages over time, and the pipeline pattern for dollar spend, etc. in ZenABM. So that really helps get some buy-in from your executives. And yeah, we have a special offer on all plans with the Cove Bootcamp. And also, if you decide to go with ZenABM, the first 3 people that decide to choose ZenABM will get free ABM consulting as well. And yeah, without further ado, do we have any questions? No questions. That was a lot of content, I know. But thank you. Oh yeah.
Have you considered adding any one-to-few campaigns after doing one-to-many stuff here?
We actually had a one-to-few campaign. It was targeting education sector companies. It was around 50-something accounts. And no, actually, sorry, we ran two one-to-few, and one of these one-to-few was almost like one-to-one, but it was a very specific case of an insurance company that, it allowed us to run one-to-one campaign targeting a specific company, but it was actually several companies in different states, right? It was kind of a reseller company of the specific insurance. So this campaign was extremely personalized, and this one actually didn't bring about the results that we were expecting. The one-to-few did bring a few deals, and considering the company, the target audience size, and the spend, it was very effective, right? But overall, still from 59 companies, it wasn't like we were able to open deals with 50% of them. So yeah, we tried.
Would it put like one campaigns for LinkedIn? Is possible mention about the experience with one-to-few very similar to large one. So you think it's
I haven't tried classic one-to-one on LinkedIn. One reason is that we target a very specific audience, like products people, in company that aren't super large companies. So our audience sizes would be very, very small.
yes, well, I'm just concerned about the audience size. So yeah, if I just walk around on LinkedIn, but if I can add quizzes some random copies, and just play around some settings, it's not easy. It's a good hack. Yeah, because actually, in my experience,
I'd like to get the mic because I think it's very interesting.
Keeper.
I actually run some one-horn campaigns on LinkedIn, so using playing around this audience size, but made it very personalized for some specific companies, and actually it worked. I was surprised, and some big companies like Street and KC was and work and furniture, and also very personalized, personal intent. So we put exactly or so. But I did for me the question about culture scale. One pace. So this maybe I thought you have some.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have experience with one-to-one on LinkedIn except for this particular one, which was targeting health insurance company that has and no success. But I think it's possible. As you said, this hack of adding a few irrelevant companies.
From you told me about this hack.
Oh yeah, and it worked. And I got it from meetup, is our LinkedIn ad experts, the black hat LinkedIn. Yeah, so we can talk more about the hacks maybe in that working session. Yeah.
When's it like when does it not make sense to do any of this, right? Is it like a budget related thing or is it like an audience size related thing? Like when should you not be investing in money on LinkedIn?
Yeah, so I would say when you do the maths that we discussed at the beginning and you realize you will never ever break even on this. Because for instance, your ACV makes a difference. So for instance, one of our first customers at ZenABM, they started from $400 in monthly spend on LinkedIn. But because they were such a niche solution, they were like an engineering solution, but targeting really enormous audiences. They have audiences of like 2 million in one campaign, for instance. These are really huge companies, but they have extremely strong product market fit. So their like deal open rate was way, way above average. And their deal value, average contract value was high six figures. So for them, it was very easy. Okay, maybe not high six figures, but six figures. So for them, it was very easy to see like enough pipeline to justify spending a lot more. And they went, like we did a case study with them in December, they decided to shift 80% of their marketing budget to LinkedIn based on, they started in May, and by December, they basically decided to shift significant part of their marketing budget to LinkedIn. But that's like a specific case, right? For instance, with ZenABM, we have a low ACV right now, so it's hard to generate like enough pipeline because LinkedIn ads are still very expensive relatively.
What audience behavior do you see different from smaller companies to larger enterprise companies, if any? And then do you track different metrics for different size companies?
No, we don't track different metrics for different size companies. And it's an interesting question. I don't think I have like a straightforward answer. If there is anything like different about how they behave in terms of ad engagement, for instance.
Yeah.
So our targeting, we did actually run a test where we segmented by company size. So we literally ran the same campaigns, but split between like SMB audience and corporate audience with the hypothesis that this will allow us to increase audience penetration, even though we were doing impression capping. Because we felt like the larger companies are cannibalizing and taking all their impressions from smaller companies. But it wasn't based on any specific engagement levels. We saw that smaller companies were engaging with different ads than larger companies, for instance, that the CTRs were different based on company size, all the same ads. So that was kind of interesting. Maybe this offering is more relevant for a larger company, but not so much for a smaller company. And this would be interesting for you to test. What is obvious is that smaller companies tend to be more budget sensitive, but on the flip side, they have shorter sales cycles. So this is something to consider when planning your audience and when kind of projecting what results you may get from your ABM campaigns and how fast you're going to see this pipeline. Yeah. Any other questions? I think we've had a good run here. Oh, and more pizzas. But I think we need you to listen to some sponsored message. I deliver the message. I don't have the presentation, so
You'll be fine.
yeah, I'm camera shy. I'm camera shy too, obviously. Shall we skip forwards to Casper already? Okay.
I'm not going to do a long intro or something, but I'm Casper. I started a company 3 years ago called Sparkforce. We do B2B SaaS marketing for B2B SaaS and tech companies. 30 people, started 3 years ago. I've been in B2B SaaS and tech 10 plus years. Worked at Templify, Trustpilot, you guys might have known, helped them grow and stuff like that. But I'm going to talk about ABM today. And Emilia has a very technical approach. I love that. I'm gonna challenge Emilia today. So I'm kind of the other side of the coin. I'm gonna give you guys a little bit of the rundown from like where we start and how I see things, like what's working in ABM and also what's not working in ABM these days. So that's what I'm gonna do. And I think the first place we have to start is like understanding ABM from what I call a strategic perspective. So what do I mean? I think the fundamental thing I think you need to first understand about ABM is that an ABM is a motion. What do I mean? Like, so there's a difference between what I call strategies, motions, and tactics. And a lot of people, when they talk about, when you hear people going like, hey, we want to do LinkedIn, I'm like, okay, cool, but what's your overall strategy and what's that motion that supports it, right? So if you think about it, like first thinking, like, so strategy could be like anything like, hey, we do demand generation, we do demand capture. So like expanding a market, trying to gather awareness, or we're trying to capture the market. You hear the classic strategies. In here, you talk about ICP, you talk about positioning. We'll talk more about that later. But all those things, right? And then when you have motions, it could be stuff like account-based marketing. So you pick, hey, we decided to do, let's say, demand generation. Now we're doing within that, we might do ABM programmatic one, like one-to-many, or we could also be a one-to-one or one-to-few. You could also do always on, you could do thought leadership, you can do PLG. All these kind of things fit into what I call a motion. And then once you've decided on that, then you decide what tactics. I think the best example I always do is say like, okay, people come, let's say someone comes to say to you, like, hey, I want to do account-based marketing and I got this paid search set up. Like, okay, cool, but then you've picked the tactic before you pick the motion or the strategy. So the strategy dictates the motion, and the motion dictates what tactics are available to us, right? I think that's an important understanding. So understanding, like, for instance, I think the classical example, let's keep it within ABM. Within ABM, you use a lot of paid social. You use a lot of one-to-one events, like dinners, private dinners. You use send-outs. You send out one-to-one. Don't only do send-outs, you really do a lot of POG, as I said. Right. So I think why ABM fundamentally is different is also how we look at it. So if you look at it like I'm a classic university student. I don't study much, but I went there. But the classic AIDA model, like awareness, interest, desire, action, you flip it in reverse, right? So you have like so you have the classic here, and people move down a funnel. Well, a fundamental difference in understanding ABM is actually you flip the funnel a little bit because it's more about the narrow targeting from the start, right? So you fundamentally pick out your account, you focus on the eyeballs on it, and then you make people love you. So I think the fundamental difference you just need to understand is that ABM functionally is different. And we had to talk a lot about this, but I think that's really important. And there was a question before, does ABM even make sense for us? And I think that's a great question because a lot of people don't ask that before they get started on ABM. So I think the following needs to be super clear for you is need to even consider ABM as a thing. So the first of all, you need to work with B2B. I don't make me say that, but I think that's really important. Because like you need to work in B2B. I don't see Coca-Cola doing ABM tomorrow. I don't ask them, but I don't think they should. Right? You have a high lifetime value. So your lifetime value of your product or service you're selling is super high, right? Typically you see high ACVs. We'll get into the difference between them in a second, but you need to have a quite high LTV. And why do you need to have a high LTV in general? Well, you need to have a high lifetime value because otherwise the cost of running ABM will not be worth it typically, right? I think what Emilia said as an example here was a 19,000 ACV. Was that correct? Was that what Johanna said? Was it 19,000? I think I read that. My fundamental, to do a one-to-one as an example, you need to have an ACV of 500k euros per year, right? To even consider doing one-to-one. If you have below that, I am typically not seeing the results add up, right? So this is to give you guys some sort of example. Typically, also ABM requires that you have a sales team. We'll get to that in a second, but also your sales cycle is quite sophisticated, right? So, and it can take a while. It doesn't have to be a definitive must. That's what you see. Those typically also the companies that find ABM even more valuable. Because one of the things you look at when you look at ABM, it's one of the metrics we'll get to, is something called sales velocity. So also, can we speed up the sales cycle, right? So if something like if you have a sale that normally would take 18 months, well, part of an ABM strategy could also be successful criteria could also be to speed up that process, right? So you go down from 18 months to maybe 9 months, right? That's also like success criteria. You have a pretty good idea of your ICP. So just let's do a fun test here. How many can realistically say they know their ICP spot? Okay, that's quite a lot. All right, I'm gonna call out now. I'm joking. We'll do that. But like I asked that question a lot. I did it. It was so funny. I was talking at the event 2 weeks ago in front of these like C levels for these funded companies and stuff, and I asked that question, and there was a lot fewer hands than today. Kind of happy to see that. But I think the point was more that a lot of people actually can't do that. And before we can even talk about ABM, we need to be clear about who it is we want to sell to and why it is we want to sell to these people, right? And you need to have sales team. Like, I don't think we talked a lot about this, like, but fundamentally, ADM, account-based marketing, is a sales play together with sales, because it requires a lot of sales alignment, right? Because like you can say you could do a lot of inbound stuff, but typically if you have a long sales cycle and if you have like enterprise deals or something similar and you had high ACDs, then your sales teams need to pick up the ball. Like at some point you need to get involved, right? You don't have a sales team, that typically ABM's not. Right, so let's talk about the 3 types of ABM. So this is like the classic like triangle of death, not death, ABM. So what Amelia was talking about here earlier was what we call one-to-many, right? So this is the typical version that when you have a lot of accounts, and I would actually fundamentally sometimes argue that in my world, it's borderline not even always ABM, right? Because it's more like a wider dimension play. So I think the fundamental things you just need to look at, like when you have a low ROI per account, you also have a low investment per account, right? And the higher ROI per account, the higher investment you need to do. It's actually that simple, right? And then you can see what are the thresholds between them. You know, things are a little bit blurry, but you should think about it like up here, it's 500K or plus. In here is one between 100 to 500K. And then I would say, Emilia's case, I would probably say 19K ACV is probably on the low side, in my opinion. But I would say that's definitely the low bar of what you can do. And the reason is just simple. Like it's just feasibly, like it's hard to drive ROI otherwise. All right. And also to answer another question that was here, like, can you do one-to-one? Yeah, absolutely. And then also do it on LinkedIn. Typically, and we'll get to it a little bit later, but when you want to do one-to-one, you also want to make sure you expand the DMU, so the decision-making unit, right? And typically you want to expand them heavier because the buying process is different. We'll get to it, but I think that's very important to understand. All right. So I think one of the things I thought a lot about, because like there's so much, how many of you guys talk about signals in your day-to-day work these days? Yes, everyone, right? I talked about signals 15 years ago. I've been using signals. I don't know if have you ever used signals from G2 and stuff like that? Have you ever tried that stuff? Yeah, I did that 10 years ago. Like that was a thing 10 years ago. So I think like it's the classic marketing, and in Danish, like I'm from Denmark. You can't hear that too much maybe, but I'm actually from Denmark, from Copenhagen. And one of the things we have a saying in Denmark is called old wine in new bottles. It's like a classic marketing thing, because signals is sometimes a little bit like that, right? Because fundamentally, some of it are retargeting. Like, you know, like, hey, there's a signal, somebody visited my site. I'm like, yeah, that's the pixel. That's retard. Oh, okay, whatever. Sure. But so I think there's a lot of good things about signals. We just have to make sure we use them right. And the same goes for this whole idea behind clustering. And fundamentally, what is clustering? Clustering is just a new way of saying we're creating better segments. So better segments and signals, right? But so we might change the recipe, but the foundation of what we're trying to do, that's still the same. We're still trying to do account-based marketing where we have, I call it like, I was talking to a guy the other day, I was like, Casper, it's a little bit like having a sniper rifle and then trying to snipe out their accounts in one way. Like, yes, that's a good way to look at it. And that's still the same. Our tool stack and the way we do things might be different, but fundamentally what we're trying to achieve, that's the same. So, I created a bit of a fundamental ABM framework, and I'll try to walk you guys through all these steps, and I'll go through how we do everyone, or how I've done it in a few different cases, and show you a little bit about how we go about it. So first step is like, identify what is your ICP, decision-making unit, figure out what's your messaging, what's your positioning. Like we hadn't talked a lot about, like, one of the things that made Amelia so successful is also because she talks to her audience. Now, Amelia, I'm sorry, it's okay. But she knows her audience really well, right? So she knows her messaging. But for a lot of the companies we work for, we're like, well, we got to figure out who we're talking to, right? Why do we want more of them? What's the total addressable market within that? Then build your account list. We talk a lot about this. You got to build your account list. There's a million different tools, and it can get very technical. It's an important part. And then we need to talk a little bit about how do we design the how? Like, how do we actually lure these people in? Like, what do we want to talk about? Then we ensure alignment with sales, typically, and then we optimize, right? So one-to-ones, metric alignment, content creation, and so forth. All right. So let's start with the first one. Go-to-market planning, ICP, building your list. So I think there's a lot of different ways to do this. Like, I don't have a QR code for this. I'm so sorry, but ping me afterwards and I'll share all my frameworks and stuff. Happy to do it. But fundamentally, what you need to figure out is these three things. You need to have your ICP, your DMU, and your messaging. Messaging you can almost call position. So this is a good example of how we do it. Like, so we map out all the different segments here. So like, what are their demographics? So you have your fundamental company firmographics. So you have firmographic level, and then you have like a more semantic kind of level. So who are they as a company? So your firmographic could be, these are the kind of things you use on LinkedIn. So like, how many people work at the company, how much revenues you do, whatever, all these like firmographic things, where they're located. And then you have more specific things on like, what type of company is it? Like, is it stagnated in growth? Like, is it growing dramatically? Is it expanding markets? Is it because it's merging? Whatever. And all these different criteria. And then you also, in the same note, you also map out what I call the decision-making unit. I think that's really important to know, especially the higher you go in investment per account, the more it's worth to you, the bigger the buying decision, the buying committee around buying your product typically ends up becoming. So that just means like, if you're selling to a small company, let's say you're selling to SparkForce, who are 30 people, well, you might need to convince me and that over here in the corner, right? You need to convince 2 people, right? So that's not a lot of decision making is. Well, we have clients that were, let's say, 10,000 people, right? Well, there's a lot of people. There's procurement, there's the whole financial department, then there's the marketing department that's buying the tools, and that marketing department, there's 500 people, right? All of these people can be influenced, right? Is it effective, like, to influence all of them? Not always, but hence the part of like, it's a big buy, right? And then you create your messaging frameworks, right? So like, why are you trying to get yours? Like, what job are we trying to solve? Well, how are they going to do it? What's the limitation of their current way of using it? All these kind of different things. All right. So typically, like, and this is just to make it easy for you guys, like, to understand, when you create this kind of like ICP frameworks, it's super simple. So you design something around, you have some segments, so segment numbers, segment names, sample customers. So take some examples of either customers you already have or ideal customers. Like, these are the customers who you want, way. You look at stuff like company size. That's typically, especially for LinkedIn, it's it's like, I kind of call my golden metric. It's the easiest one to segment on. But then you also look at customer goals, like characteristics, like fundamentally, what's their why? Like, what's their why reason for what they buy from you? How is the product used? Like, and I think it's a good example, right? So how many of you use salt for food, right? Rhetorical question, please say yes. Okay, everyone uses salt for food, right? But have you also noticed, like, at least right now in Copenhagen, salt is also used on the roads because it's snowing like a fuck ton, right? So that's another way to use the product salt. Right? Sometimes you also have other use cases for your product, but typically as marketeers, we sometimes narrow down to like, oh, it's the only thing we do. But you need to figure out if your segments are using your products differently, right? Then you map out all your personas. This is going back to DUs. You have key stakeholders. You have value propositions. What are the actual value propositions you could argue with? And then I think the important part is also this part, no new product is replacing something else. I think that's also something people have a tendency to forget sometimes. That sometimes, let's say you go out and say, okay, I'm building new CRM, right? Okay, then you're, in a lot of cases, if you're selling to larger organizations, then you're definitely replacing something else. It's not like there's a new product, but if you're selling to one main company, they might not have a CRM, right? Like, it might be using Excel spreadsheets or something. And then I typically work with what I call estimated current value. So what is the TAM, like total addressable market? And then I work with what I call the disrupted TAM. So a lot of, like, especially if you've ever seen a pitch deck where you go like, yeah, I can sell to 5 billion people across the earth. And like, yeah, but not all those 5 billion people are going to need a CRM. So maybe not. Or maybe some of them has Salesforce and you can't convince them to change otherwise. So there's some sort of disrupted value in it. All right. So I'm going to go through... This is how it could look like. This is back when I did it for a big fintech, and it's blurred out. I'll send you the slides afterwards. But it's just to give you an idea. They don't need any fancy tools to do this. It's just a big template in Excel, right? Like, it's just a big template that you fill out. I think a lot of people are also hesitant to do this process because they feel like it has to be super accurate.
a lot of the process is guesstimates, right? A lot of this guesstimates where you take in sales, you're taking marketing, you're taking your leadership, you take up as much data as you can get, don't get me wrong, but at some point you just have to say, okay, our gut feeling is believing this is the right thing, so let's go with this. Fundamentally, what it is about is getting to a point where you can pick a segment and say, this is the segment we're going for. Okay, now I lost it. That was bad. All right, cool. So now we've identified the segments with the most potential. What are the actual companies we need to focus on? And now there's so many tools out there here, and I'm just showing you some of them ones I've used. It's a million different tools out there. Data providers like BuildWith, Datanyze, Cognism, Lusha, Venue, Ocean, Clave, whatever. I've used all of them. Apollo even, right? There's so many of them. It doesn't really matter. Like, yes, there's some data quality between if you're using ZoomInfo is better for the US, Cognism better in EU, stuff like that. But that's fundamentally not the point. Typically, like you need a good data provider. I think that's kind of what I'm trying to say. And then your list looks some things like this. Like it doesn't actually matter, but fundamentally you need to get to a point where you have a list of where all the company details are, and typically also the contact people you don't want to get to. All right. So a few mistakes to avoid in this process. That's really important. So first and foremost, you don't want to overdo it. You want to be super specific. It's better to actually start small, in my opinion, and then start. And that's a little bit weird when it comes to marketing in general sometimes, but when it comes to ABM, you definitely want to start, I call it comfortably narrow. You have to be comfortable with being narrow. It's better to do it this way than the other way around in the beginning of these. And I think, like, I remember I did this exercise before I started SparkForce at one of the companies I work for, this fintech. And they were like, yeah, I just want to close Goldman Sachs. And I'm like, yeah, we all want to close Goldman Sachs. I'm like, sure. Cool. I also want to do that. But we got to make sure it's actually the right segment and not just the right name, right? So make sure when you do the ICP exercise, you actually get to the proper segmentation in the beginning. That's what's going to win you the deals away. All right. And then you can up your list, like typically a lot of our customers use HubSpot. We use it a lot. I am a big fan of HubSpot for this particular reason. Also because when you integrate with sales, so you have this like target account lists and you upload it into there, and then you can integrate with our tools you're using afterwards. All right, I'm going to this one. Whatever. All right. So this is personally, and so now we got like the first foundation part in place, right? Now we want to do, in my opinion, what is the fun part as marketeers is to design like a WAPO. So make it as personal and relevant, as specific as possible. I know it sounds super generic. I will give you some examples in a second. But I think you to use all this intent data from all these different platforms to do this. You can use there's a lot of tools for this. I think the fundamentals that you need to understand in the beginning is you don't want to overcomplicate it. You don't necessarily need tools to get started with this. We could do it smarter with tools. My typical philosophy is we need to prove this works before you invest in tools to scale it. That's kind of my go-to take. Take it for what it is, but that's how I would treat it. For instance, like here's my old example. I love the Drifted, where like they had, this was before a lot of tools. It was quite a few years ago, but you can insert a dynamic headlines, right? Dynamic headlines on many bases. A classic example. These days, you can also do it in LinkedIn ads. You can actually do dynamic personalization in the ads. I don't know if you guys are aware of that. That's a thing you can do these days. It's a little bit buggy sometimes, but it works. So there's things like this. So I brought 7.5 examples of some of the cool things you can do that I've done over time that I've thought I would like to share with you. So I used to work at a company called Templify. And back when I did that, I would, you have to just remember, this is a little bit before AI, so like things have changed. You don't have to use Google Trends or mention these days, but it's the same principle. So what I did was Templify was kind of product that worked really, really well when there was a fusion happening, when companies were merging or going through a rebranding process. Because Templify, what they fundamentally do is they go in for very large enterprises and help them streamline how to use their brand using in Office 365. So it's a little bit longer. So fundamentally, and this is the important part, is like understanding that whenever somebody was going through a merger or was going through a funding, a rebranding process, or this one, sometimes they would be called out as like a brand success. And it's like fourth report, that was one I call a compelling event, because that was like, okay, there was an actuality that was really relevant for that company in specific, right? So what I would do is I would literally set up trends for all these different accounts in my account lists, and then I would automate the creation of, like I could automate the creation of the ads, but I could automate the creation of the audiences. This is before we had. But so all these I made, but essentially I made all these ads every time a company was, hey, these companies are going through a fusion, these companies are going for a rebranding process, and so forth. This worked really, really well. Like, was a good example of getting so close and super personal to the customers, because they like, yeah, man, we're going through a rebrand right now. Okay, cool. Then we talk right into their pain points, where it's hurting them right now. I use this one a lot in my. So, how many of you guys have tools that work really well with other tools? Do you have any like integrations and stuff like that? Right? Yeah, classic. So one of the things I did when I was Templified, so we had an example. We had a really good integration with Salesforce, classic tool. So a lot of these data providers, what they can do is also give you insights on what kind of tools they have. So what a tool stack is, and sometimes it's just based on surface level, what you can see on their website, but sometimes these like have real research teams that actually figure this out. Anyways, we can make ads that talk to the fact that they use a specific tool. Sometimes it's a little bit, you need to have a good relationship with your partner, in this case, Salesforce. But fundamentally, what you can do is just use that in your ads. Because again, if it feels super personal, then you're like, hey, Michael, how's it going? I can see you guys are using Salesforce as well or something, or whatever it is you're using. We have a really cool integration. This is how it can help you, right? That feels better than just getting a generic ad, right? Like that talks about Templify. So again, we're trying to get closer. And I remember specifically, we had one of the lowest cost per leads back in the day, even being like, this was an ABM Lite version, so one to few. The focus campaign, even back in the day, right? This is not something I haven't done this myself, but I think it's the coolest example I've ever seen of like super personal one-to-one. This is like the most hardcore version of one-to-one I've ever seen in the future. So there was this company called Gum, and they tried to land T-Mobile as a client back in the day. And back in the day, they had a CEO at that time who's called John. And John, he was a massive, big comic Batman fan. He was a massive Batman fan. So what they did was they commissioned and published a comic book with this John Laguerre as the Batman-esque superhero in T-Man who would save his city from bad cell phone coverage, right? And to his surprise, he would write on Twitter, back it's called Twitter, hey, I love this. Thank you for making Sewell come. I don't know if the story actually ended up closing the deal, but at least they got it on his radar, right? I think this is just an example of like some of the things that's possible when we actually, in my opinion, this is when we go hardcore on ABM. So if you think about it, how many resources, and this is again before AI, right? So how many resources would it not take to produce something like this and get it in front of, not necessarily maybe expensive to get in front of, but at least producing. That's a lot of resources for just one person, right? But maybe in this case, it was worth it for it. So here, somebody was before asked front here about like one-to-one and a few examples. So here, this is one of our clients we work with, is someone called Security Bridge. They have like a SAP security software, super nerdy. It's only for SAP enterprise companies use SAP. Anyways, we did a campaign specifically for Puma, right? So just one company, Puma. And then, sorry for, you can bear here, sorry if I did. Just to give you an example there. So here they have Dream Data. So here we use Dream Data to actually track all the different impression points you could see along the way. And now over here, what you can see here is actually it turned into meetings and into pipeline. But you can also see it took quite a while to get there, right? And that's because there's multiple stakeholders been involved alongside the process, right? There's been a lot of people who've been involved all the way through in that process of landing it, right? But here you can see this is a good way of showing Puma without, like, I don't hope there's anyone from Puma here, but not officially saying it's Puma, because you can't do that. We did that with Highball to like the wine cubbies that turn on down. But the point being, we can at least show part of it, so it gives the association that it's Puma. The people from Puma would actually go. This is one of my favorite examples that I've actually just about to replicate ourselves. This is also from one of our clients. So they do like a hardware, software. So how many of you guys have like a hardware component to your software? Does anyone have that? No. So you're all software. Okay, that's fair enough. You can still do it. But so they have, in this case, this is IoT. So this is one of the things where like what they sell is like they have this manufacturing plant. So like if, for instance, a brewery has a manufacturing part, a brewery, think Carlsberg, Coca-Cola, not Coca-Cola, but Carlsberg, Heineken. And then they help manage those factories or breweries, essentially, large scale. So, yeah, manufacturers. And what they do is that a security element, and this is like this small box that you implement to each device at that. So how do you give people that feeling of that device without actually giving them that device? Well, what you give them is a physical copy, sort of. So they picked out, if I recall correctly, it was 100 accounts. So there was 100 accounts that they all sent a small package that was actually a Lego. So they're a Danish company. So it was a small Lego, and it was a Lego box where they had scanned QR code that would take you to this website with instructions on how to build your own device. It's not a real device, it's Lego. But to give them a sort of physical copy, and then they could download the instructions, and this had a massive response rate. So I think the response rate was 89%. So out of 100, 89 people got back to them. That's insane. And you have to remember, these are super high value accounts, right? So they're massively worth it. It was expensive to do, like the Lego thing is kind of expensive, but trust me, it's worth it. And this is also why I'm kind of trying to copy it. So please tell me if I'm an idiot here, but what I'm doing is I'm sending all our account lists this little unicorn. I'm telling like, hey, guys, we're really good at building unicorns. Do you want to build one together? So like, it's kind of like a fun same idea, right? So you can you don't need to have like a hardware as an example, but you can send them all this. But let's be honest, how many of you remember things you got sent like this more than how many ads you see on LinkedIn, right? So you have to find like that balance where you're like, this does not stand alone, but it can work together. And it depends on what kind of motion within ABM you actually do. Right. And then you have in-person events, like the things we're doing today, right? Today is also a version of ABM, right? Yes, events work, but they have to be done right. So personally, what we try to do, and this is just to give you guys some inspiration, I believe a lot in two types of things you want to do for events. You want to do owned events. We had our first own conference last year. We did for B2B SaaS companies, grow for 120 people. Emilio's there, super cool, thanks. And then we do private exclusive dinners for CMOs and VPs within our account, right? So we get super close to them. Because like our case, when we sell the clients, it's a lot about trust, it's a lot about knowing each other and stuff like that. So we do like these kind of exclusive things. That's also how it works. Like a lot of people, when they think of events, they think of this like, hey, it's gonna go to SaaStr and it's gonna buy a booth and it's gonna be super expensive and super scale. But there's other versions of doing it. And like if you want to invest that much, you might as well create your own event, or you might want to go super narrow. That's a good example. And then one of the things I think a lot of people don't do enough of, that I've tried to do a lot, but is also curating content with your target audience, right? So especially in ABM. So let's say you want to close like let's say you want to close Cognizant, right? Like Cognizant's here. What do you do? Well, you get Cognizant to come on your podcast, right? And talk about how awesome they are, right? Like pretty awesome. But I think the point is more like curating content together with people is super useful, right? So what I do is typically I join. I have my own podcast, one through Sparkforce, Marketing Corner with Jennifer. So, we had Katrina talked about ABM base. It was actually a pretty good episode, so this you're going to listen to. But I join other podcasts that are in the right space. So I try to fit into what like my audience cares about. That's a general, and then I use that for ads. And then I try to get my target accounts. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like, I think it's really important to say I'm not compromising content quality. I'm not just getting someone on because like, hey, you're the right account, but you don't really know marketing. That's not how it works. I try to get good people from the good accounts I care about. I try to get them on my podcast, try to get them on webinars, or curate content together with them. That's a really good way to get to know people. And it's a good icebreaker in general. And then you want to create what I call relevant content for thought leader programs. So Emilia also talked about this, but if you're not doing TLAs on LinkedIn today, you're kind of missing out. It's by far the best format right now. And I agree, it probably won't stay like that forever. We have a tendency as marketeers to show everything that's good, right? But fundamentally, what I believe when you do a thought leader program, so it's easy to do it when you have people like Amelia, me, man, whatever, who gets it. Like we get it. Like we're used to writing on LinkedIn, it's not usual. But what do you do when you have a CEO who does not get it, who's never been active on LinkedIn or anything before? What we've done, but sir personally, like for a lot of our clients, and what we try to do, and also either teach them or do for or Jesus some balance, is fundamentally, so we do like these stakeholder interviews. So we interview them. We use Riverside, use whatever tool we want to use. Interview them virtually. Then we transcribe these using AI. And then we get them over because we base these AI personas on them. So tone of voice and all these in-brain guidelines. We insert all these things. And then we have our copywriters edit them after the AI has done its work. Then we send it over and the stakeholder says, yeah, this is good. I can approve this. And then we get them to post it and then we boost it, right? So instead, because like what we found is like if we teach them people, and that usually is enough, but not always, right? And sometimes you have these CEOs, CLOs, they're too busy, so you got to find a way to make them interesting. Because also, as Amelia also bringing out, a lot of the content on from big corporates are super fucking boring. So you got to do something different. So this is how you. Yeah, I think this is another example, right? So here we record with the people, like this and that. Here in this case, then we edit it, and then we kind of make the transcript and kind of produce it from there. Super simple. All right, so the last part. So how do you align with sales? How do you kind of look at your KPIs and so forth? So I think the first things first is like you want to make sure when you do this, is you want to dedicate resources for the proper ABM. So what I call it is there's a classic approach without ABM, and then there's a classic approach now with ABM, in my opinion. So the classic approach is more like you have a classic BR, SDR team, an outbound team, and then you have an inbound team that might tickle AI. Sometimes it's the same team, sometimes they're with the AI. And then sometimes you have what I call, but what I typically advocate for is that you design what I call ADRs, so account development representatives. If your accounts are big enough, and this is typically what you do when you have a one-to-few or one-to-one account. Like when you have that kind of setup, you can do it one-to-many, but then it's a little bit different in how you treat it. But then it's more of a volume game, as we kind of saw. But where the other ones is super narrow. But here, typically, I find a good example when I worked at Templify, we designed ADRs. Sometimes we had an ADR that just had one account. So like, okay, you alone cooking meetings for Deloitte. 50,000 people on Deloitte worldwide, go crazy here, right? So fundamentally, the belief is kind of like to set up what an account developer representative team that focuses on these specific accounts you work together. And then, let's click your read. Then you pick their accounts based on your ICP and based on your ABM model. You do that together with your sales team. You evaluate, you optimize, you have their ownership. These things are done together with your ADRs and your sales team. And then you have ADRs, well, they connect with the relevant stakeholders. They email, call, do follow-ups, respond to chat, intent activity, whatever it is that comes in. And then you have your marketing. Well, we do ads, we do landing page setup, we blog post industry pages. I think the important part about understanding why we need to talk about this is that this is what you need to do when you start, right? Like when you start out, you need to have this alignment. A lot of people forget that there's shared ownership and then there's divide and conquer between you. Right? So when you start out an ADM process, you want to make sure you are all aligned on who owns what. That's the most important thing, in my opinion. And what webinars do. That's our stuff. I'm not going to go too into metrics here. I think ZenABM has some really good like dashboards, stuff like that. I think you do a lot with HubSpot alone. I think you could do a lot in general. I think fundamentally what you want to look at when you want to, and this is really important to me, you don't want to overcomplicate it. Like ABM is the hardest thing to measure, in my opinion. Like just to be transparent, and doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means it's the hardest one to do. And you don't have to do all the metrics. You don't have to look at all the accounts, engage accounts, discovery calls, metrics, reply rates, positive reply rates. But you have to get to the easy route, in my opinion, and that would be what are the number of opportunities within targeted accounts that you're looking at. That's one of your key metrics you need to be looking at. And what is the engagement? So intent measured from the targeted accounts. And you can use other tools like ZenABM or whatever to actually measure these kind of intents, but these are the kind of things you want to look at. And then the most important metric, if you can get to it, be mindful of this, is what I call sales velocity, right? So here we look at what's the number of opportunities times the average deal size being said back to Kubernetes, you know. What's the average deal size times the conversion rate divided by the sales cycle rate? That's what we call your sales velocity, right? I think some of the full funnel guys, Andre and Vladimir, are super cool. They do this even better than I do, but this is fundamentally the key metric. If you ever get to this is where you prove real value. I think that typically when you talk to a C-level, board level, it's not always that they understand. But if you ever get to a level of understand with them that they do understand this, that this is your most powerful thing. How do you ensure alignment? I think this is like, I feel like sometimes I'm, when I say it kind of feels a little bit like, so simple, but I think fundamentally what you want to do is just like weekly, bi-weekly catch-ups with sales. Like I don't think a lot of people do that when they run ABM programs. You need to talk to your sales teams at all times. Set it up in Slack, we have go-to-market task force, we have different dashboards, you do whatever. And you want to make sure you have one reporting place. This is really important. One reporting place to rule them all. Give me Looker Studio, your CRM, Dina, Fippler, ZenABM, whatever it is, doesn't really matter that much. Just make sure you agree that you have one place that you look at and agree that this is where you look. Right, so now we're ready for deployment. I think this is a really cool, I think it's cool. I know you guys think it's cool, but I think, what I'm trying to say with this is there's a lot of stuff you can do, but making it work together, that's typically where the magic happens. This is a classic marketing saying, right? So what I'm trying to say is just like you have your basic foundation in place. That's kind of what we're talking about. This is like you have your data set up, you have your strategy, Google Analytics, HubSpot, strategy for go-to-market, ABM in this case. And then you have your brand, you have design, your content, which is kind of like a trust establishment. But work for every deployment thing you do, it depends on what motion you're doing, right? And we talked about that in the beginning, so it depends on what strategy. And all of them, and I think the interesting part is more like how do you make sure they work together? Because there can be cases if, like, let's say you do one-to-many approach, like some of the stuff we talked with Emilia. Well, I've actually historically also tried like with paid search. You can actually make that work, but it depends again on how your motioner works. And all of them depends on how much short-term ROI versus long-term ROI and the sustainability of it, right? And how they work together is also part of deciding what you want to do. I think that's the important part because like every single one also plays a part in ABM if you want to, but it's just about designing the phase. Typically when we do ABM, it's between these two, but also these like, and that's the weird part about it is because the thought leadership element is a lot more relevant. Typically I find the paid search or organic search really have to have special use cases to make them work when it comes to ABM, but it is awesome. So, and again, just to keep it super simple, when you set up your demand gen framework or using ABM on LinkedIn, it doesn't have to be super complicated. You're looking at, you want to set up three things. So we want to understand three things. You want to have your objectives. Typically, you want to work with either video views and engagement. You want different formats. Typically, what we set up is like videos. Also, can you use as TLAs. Single image ads or using GIFs also can be used as TLAs again. And then you have text ads. Text ads kind of like freebie. Like, do you guys use text ads? Yeah, always use text ads. Or thing. Yeah, it is super smart, right? So you want to have text ads as well because they're kind of freebie. But these are two fundamental formats, and these are all like it's important to say like TLAs purpose, right? So. And then when you talk about content, well, it's not because we have to be super revolutionary at this part, but we have to talk about pains and gains, or we have to talk about results. Those are the kind of things you set up in your classic co-layer demand gen frame. You have to pique your interest enough for them to engage and to get on their radar. That's what we're trying to do. Right. And then what's the last lesson when I leave you guys from down here? I think just fundamentally, if you're just starting out, don't overthink it. Don't be afraid to start manual and then automate it later, get some tools later. Like, I know there's a lot of shiny new tools out there, but like sometimes just, if you're not aligned on internally on what you want to achieve, like the clear messaging, you define your ICP, then you're not ready to buy that expensive tool. That's not going to solve it for you. So get all the foundation in place and then you'll do a lot better. And I think that's it. Cool.
Do we have any questions to Kasper?
Is that a good sign or?
speechless. The audience had
That
left
is good.
speechless.
Awesome. That was-
It was criminally good. We saw, but like the police was just luckily we are in the basement. So yeah. Thank you guys. We're gonna move on to the panel. So I would love to invite a few more people on stage. Our amazing ABM bootcamp speakers, Katja. I'm going to be pronouncing her last name, Tarapkovskaya. You just right from the U-Seller ABM agency. So could you please step on stage? On me. No. Joanna Petrova is also a demand and an ABM expert. Guys, we're going to introduce yourself. Of course, we'll have Alpha. We'll Joanna. A few rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Lal, do you? I don't like. But I was also speaking at the ABN, I don't know, from the perspective of the follower for each. And yeah, Casper, who want to take it. So you want to yeah, up to you, entirely up to you. And the way we're gonna do it, we're gonna ask you a bunch of questions. And we're going to be passing the mic down the road, but everyone has only one sentence to answer. So really, we can't...
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. There's no playing, no monologues. It's like just the meat.
Okay. Right, John. I'll ask the question, you introduce yourself, and then answer the question. So the question is, what's the most expensive ABM lesson you've learned the hard way?
I'm Joanna. I lead Global ABM at PageUp, which is an HR tech company from Melbourne. Most expensive lesson. I didn't actually think I'd be last in this one, so I wanted to bring something slightly different. I was going to say vendor management. So vendor management, you can buy the most expensive, fanciest, shiniest tool. We were talking about this, weren't we? But it needs consistent, like daily or weekly management, and you consistently manage the stakeholders that work for that product. And unless you do it and just send them action points every week, they're not going to get anything done.
See it true.
Oh, I am currently around ABM agency partnership with Success and HubSpot. The most expensive lesson, don't adopt technology if you have no strategy execution plan in place. That's it.
Well, that's like going to be a book and playbook here. I also think it's about tool stack, right? If you don't have your foundation in place, you shouldn't invest in tools. That's one sentence.
And data, yeah.
So luckily, I didn't learn that lesson the hard way because our CEO is always like, do you have the proof of concept before you buy any solutions? Which is also why we built ZenABM, because I just couldn't get the buy-in to get, 6 Sense or Demand Base. And I was testing these tools, and honestly, I wasn't sure. It wasn't like a proper POC. So my most expensive lesson is, I guess, letting certain settings on. It was almost, we caught this early, but we left. Basically, one of our colleagues launched a campaign and they didn't realize that they didn't apply the right filters. So the campaign has gone out to the entire United States. We were very happy, like after a few hours, like they come back to me and say, like, look at this, like the number of impressions we got on this campaign is going so great. I'm like, oh yeah, it's going, so wait a minute, right? So then we caught it quite early, but like LinkedIn, it's very easy, but it's also very easy to fall into a trap.
That's why you set the limit on the cards. Like it. Yeah, okay. How is AI changing the way you run ABM today? And where is it still overhyped?
So AI has been really helpful for us. I think before, is it where this? Yeah, that's okay. Lovely.
Would have thought I'd done enough karaoke to know how this. So AI has changed
We do ABM a lot. I mean, I joined the company about a year and a half ago, and while they had run ABM, they hadn't had a consistent ABM motion, I wouldn't say. Through the tools that we've used, we've specifically, AI has specifically helped with list creation and launching ads faster, but it has huge limitations. And like any software field, most of the AI features, they're already just roadmap at the moment. So vendors are not to pile on again, but I think there is a lot of the dream that is sold to us by vendors still just on the roadmap for a lot of cases.
Not here. Not from ZenABM, but I didn't need that.
I can't measure my life without AI. So I use AI a lot for building AI workflows for content creation, for the content intelligence, for buying committee mapping, so different tools. And I always use AI automation orchestration, so not just like separate AI tools or tech stack. So we use end-to-end or just now Claude work and Claude code a lot. So overhyped. Just in terms of personalization, I a bit concerned because still it's not perfect and it requires a human touch. And especially if you talk about one-to-one or one-to-few, it's definitely, I wouldn't recommend to use AI, like autonomous AI systems for content creation for this kind of campaigns. I use a lot for the context engineering, definitely, and some repetitive manual tasks to automate. One tip, not actually how I use AI, it's Claude M Speed, connecting with all my tools, especially CRM, analyzing data, extract some additional insights, and use it for building campaigns and workflows. AI is a big part of my work life and personal life as well.
I do a lot of the same stuff. I think most important part I think fundamentally what we need to kind of settle on is that ABM is about being super personal. And if you go one-to-one, like I don't think you use that much AI, to be honest, right? But what I do use in one-to-many stuff, we use a lot, right? And especially we feed it with ICP messaging and all the stuff we have, and then we make sure the stuff we're doing to them is aligned with that. It's a really good use case and a really good way of doing it. But I think fundamentally, it's not like it's going to create a campaign that sends out a Lego, at least not tomorrow, right? So I think that part, like, when it comes to ABM, I think there's still some way to go. But I think a lot of the AI, especially the ad creation, like coming up with the different concepts, also that's a really useful thing.
I can test you a little bit on that one-to-one use for AI. So just like less than a year ago, I would say half a year ago, we had a team of, 4 VDRs based in the US. You can imagine how much that costs a lot. Plus a BDR manager, so I get an even higher salary, a demand gen manager, a content manager that was supposed to create content for these ABM campaigns, like high quality collateral, for instance, PDFs with checklists, guides, resources that we could attach to the outreach. So the BDRs were supposed to do their research on the accounts and some personalized, effective outreach messages that would sometimes include these, resources created by this ABM content team. None of this has worked out for the simple reason that there are just so many of these signals and pieces of information that even for one account, like this could be hundreds of properties that the BDR simply couldn't all take in. So our pretty amazing GTM engineer, Bilal, who's sitting here, by the way, in the front row, has come up with this system that if we feed all this context into Clay at that time, we started working on it before Claude Code is actually being launched, so around, in the summer. And if we feed all these signals on company level, on contact level, ultimately, merging these signals in one play table, And we can extract some additional signals from like first-party tools. We could scrape their websites to look for hiring signals for product launches, any initiatives within the company, etc., etc., etc. We could combine that into account and contact level intelligence, and based on this and based on some of our, experience with well-performing templates for specific personas, we can literally generate a highly individual message for every contact we're reaching out to. And now with Claude's code, we took it even a step further, where Bilal has fed that information with all our information from our blog posts and some template or collateral into Claude code. And we are basically able to generate individualized collateral, so specific guides for every company, every, persona in that company we're reaching out to. So this is like an unprecedented level of personalization that is with specific guardrails, because we're not like creating this content suite that's 2 miles long, can be very, very relevant. And I think this is like completely game changing. And we're seeing really good results. I have a look at the stats that you shared from Andrzej Kevich, that the average positive response rate is 0.2%. So we're seeing 0.5% from this outreach now. And some really good opportunities starting to. That was more than one sentence.
Just not comment like that.
Slightly. We're going to stick to it.
As long as you don't breathe in between, it's okay.
Yeah, but see, to your defense, you already answered the question number 3 that I had, which was exactly about this. So
Okay, skip forward.
yeah, so we're gonna go to number 4 actually. So, what's the best channel most effective for you last 12 months?
Oh, that's a good one.
Define effective. I think that's more of a rhetorical question. And I mean, MJ, feel free to.
No. At least you define effective for you, and which one was that?
I mean, so we only really launched ABM in April, May of last year. There's been 2 almost nearly distinct phases of effectiveness. One has been advertising effectiveness, seeing some early signals, and then second one has been revenue. When it comes to revenue, which I think is more what this question is getting at, the thing that has helped the most has been multi-channel engagement and staying really close to the SDRs. So as what Casper was saying, having conversations with the SDRs and the sales reps every week or every other week. And within 3 of those meetings every other week, we increased tool usage threefold and managed to 10x pipeline within 3 meetings, so 6 weeks. So yes, that was the most expected thing, but it's really how everything works all together. So that was display, LinkedIn with thought leadership, SDR outreach.
In my experience, it depends on ABM motion and on the buying stage. So different, I would split it into a few groups. If we talk about one-to-one, it's definitely building very personalized customer experiences. So it's mainly maybe bespoke workshops or some executive roundtables. So it's very it's great experience for this top accounts and very relevant. If you talk about one-to-few, so it might be webinars and LinkedIn. So still number 1, LinkedIn and webinars. One-to-one webinar, LinkedIn as well, but just it's very specific and it's tricky and very tricky to execute. In terms of one-to-many, of course, it's display ads, programmatic. But I would highlight webinars, definitely. Again, you can use different types of webinars. Depends on also account specific or challenge specific or product focused. So there are many types of webinars, and depends on the audience. If we talk about technical audience or business audiences, also very different types of webinars. So.
I'm gonna try and say something that has been said already. Because I totally agree with everything. Of course, LinkedIn is a big factor, but we've had good success with Reddit as well, actually. Sometimes when you do, as an example, when you do one-to-ones,
like the companies are so large sometimes that they have all these already communities. So, for instance, a good example is Novo Nordisk, this Danish company that sells weight loss medicine or stuff. They have these like communities on Reddit that only talks about Novo Nordisk. So you can actually do ads on those communities, and then you only target Novo Nordisk in place. So a good idea for something different, but fundamentally LinkedIn, events, stuff like that are still the best channels.
Or actually gifting. Yes, reach desk. Yeah. Gifting, yeah, actually sounds very well as well. Absolutely. Yeah.
I need to pick your brain about that in a working session. For us, yeah, obviously there has been LinkedIn, one-to-many programmatic, we could say, ads, and it's been email, it seems, LinkedIn messaging, maybe because the scale is quite limited. Hard to say at the moment. So I'm curious to swap some experience people that have done it more.
Okay. Next question.
Last question.
Last question. Oh, okay. One thing the audience should go on do on Monday morning to make their ABM work better.
Look into advertising context theory is one of my favorite things to nerd out on. So essentially like what channel or what placement in advertising it should get into the shoes of your customers or prospects to try and understand how they're feeling or what they're thinking when they're seeing the ads. And let's pretend this is still one sentence. Give yourself some grace. Like I feel like there's so much FOMO and negative, but aspirational content out there that ends up being FOMO. So there's so much tech, so much AI. Like I can't for the life of me use Claude Code because my security team will strangle me. As a joke for legal reasons. But yeah, so there's so much FOMO out there. Just give yourselves grace. I'm sure you're doing great. You a very successful 2026. I love data.
So actually, every day I monitor campaigns performance and also from, I think it's working and not working. CRM data, historical win patterns, and I think we underestimate the power of data. And this one thing. And another thing, my top 10 accounts. So what actually the account progression, so where they are at the buying stage, and so which activities help me to move them forward. Yeah, I think that's it. Something, just simple things. And maybe the last thing, top 2 sales more often. But I'm this person who loves working with sales because I was previously on the sales side as well. And I really love working with the reason why I love ABM, because big part of ABM success is working closely with sales and speak the same language.
It's annoying. Yes, guys, say talk to sales. But if you've done that already, then I would say go figure out your ICP. Like fundamentally figure out exactly who it is you're trying to get to and why you're trying to get to them. I think that's what, if you're starting out on Monday, do that.
I don't want to repeat myself, so repeat what you've already mentioned. I wanted to mention a few of these points as well. I would say if you're running LinkedIn ads, go to your ads and look if you have any memes in your ads. And if you do, turn them off. I got a lawsuit for using a meme from someone who was the copyright owner. That's a joke, but no, it wasn't a joke. It really happened. But we settled, but it still was sad. Like we had to pay for that meme, like pretty much as our advertising budget for a month at that point. So, yeah. But on the more serious note, I would kind of resonate, but maybe not talk to sales. Yes, talking to sales is important, but how do you do that at scale? Do a proper win-cost analysis. And it's so easy these days to funnel your call transcripts from, like the most successful deals or the less successful deals into a folder, run, Claude code over it and ask it questions, like to spot trends in these transcripts and really understand what is triggering conversions and what is, like making you lose these deals. And you can really learn a lot from that, who to target and what to target people with in terms of messaging And then regardless of the channel, like the same messaging can resonate, whether it's display advertising, LinkedIn ads, email, whatnot. But it's really important to understand what makes your buyers buy. Yeah, and I think we're kind of on time here. Thank you so much for, your attention, and thank you so much, our great speakers, for joining us today. We have some gifts. Yeah, can you go and push them? Yeah, yeah. We have some gifts for yours. Our just need someone because 2 legs to run for them. Do you have any questions still to our speakers, our panelists today? It looks like we mostly have the most hardcore ABM experts left at the audience. Yes. I'm not thinking about gifting. Gifting. Oh yeah, this is super hasty. So yeah.
Why do you talk about it?
One example that actually worked surprisingly very well with one of my customers. So we wanted to use some gifting and lead generation. I shouldn't say lead generation, but they asked, we need more leads. And I'm like, okay, so let's come up with some ideas. Leads, okay, that's fine. So it's just sweet box, but locked with a code. And to open this code, you need to scan a QR code, submit your, so this lead generation activity, but everyone loved. So inside the sweet box was some tasty candies, but you can't see what's inside. It wasn't transparent, and you don't know what's inside. You said it's just sweet secret box, and we use them for our conferences and events, and so many cool prospects. So exactly like from our list, they knew about this company. They started visiting on our website. So this is just gifting, but actually it was like lead generation, and we use them for some targeted events and conferences, and for from our prospects as a gifting. So, and actually, like how to measure success. So we closed 5 big deals with enterprises just using this gifting. So so I recommend to experiment with different gifting ideas, or just here.
That's awesome. That's all right. Make you guys.
Vedo molto scarettire con lato. You can dust come. Yeah.
Oh, it's